Every company is chasing the perfect portable music making device. Ableton has Move, Roland has a number of different approaches, Teenage Engineering has the OP1 Field, OPXY, but somehow, the small company 1010 Music took most of my favorite features from all of the different Grooveboxes and portable music making devices that I've tried and put them into a single box. I was really surprised with the Bento, and today I want to talk to you about the 3 standout features, some of the highlights, and some of my qualms with the Bento. 1010 Music is the sponsor for today's video, but they had no say over the content in this video. They just want more people to know about Bento. And after spending a little over a month with it, I've got a lot to talk about. All right, so the long and short of it, the big rundown is this is a Groovebox. You have a maximum of 8 tracks. You have all different kinds of tracks though. Some synth tracks, different kinds of sampling like multi-sampling synths, drum one-shot kits, Granular, and Looper, which we'll get into in a bit. It's got sort of like a clip style view where you can launch different clips or sequences, and then also a song mode where you can build up scenes made of those sequences. A pretty powerful machine for sample-based sound design. They've just added the wavetable, and also for building up songs. Main highlights for me are the compact form factor. You all know I love portable gear, and this thing is easy to travel with. It's a situation where I think it's punching way above its weight class when it comes to size versus features. Because of course, as you can see here, large touch screen, which is very, very useful when you're diving into the weeds of different sampling techniques, a whole modulation menu here where you can set multiple sources and amounts, a mixer, editing 2 different granular layers of a granular synth. The screen is amazing and functions exactly how you might expect it to. Also, we gotta give it up for the I/O on the back, even if they are very hard to read. 2 MIDI inputs, 2 MIDI outputs, 3 stereo audio inputs, and 3 stereo audio outputs, in addition to a phone's output. And by the way, if you're running the metronome while you're recording with this thing, the metronome only playing through the phones. So you could use this in a performance context with a metronome running in your monitors and not put that out to everybody listening. Also, I think a telltale sign for investing in a device is how much is it going to be supported. You know, with the Ableton Move, we saw tons of updates and we're still seeing updates come after launch with a clear roadmap. Now, I think in the month and a half that I've had this device, a few major features have dropped in beta firmware and they might even be out now. A major one is adding a wavetable synth to this thing, the Fireball synth, patch preview, which probably should have been there from day one, but we'll talk about that in gripes. In the most recent beta firmware, there's now the ability to connect Bento to the computer and you can access the SD card without ejecting it. So an SD card reader mode, which is definitely a quality of life improvement. So all I'm saying is, in my just short experience with the Bento so far, there's been a bunch of significant improvements. Multi-sampling on the Bento is fantastic. Being able to essentially take any of my synths on the go, put them into this box, it's a really convenient, easy process. Let me show you what I mean. So here I've got my Mini Freak synth connected to the Bento. Audio is going out from the Mini Freak into the Bento. MIDI is going out from the Bento into the Mini Freak. I'll show you why. First, I'm going to make a new multi-sample instrument. Press record. Since the preset on the Mini Freak is called Sharp Pedals, I'm going to give it the same name here. Now, if I play a note on the Mini Freak, oh gosh, I realized I wasn't connected to an audio input. Audio in. Okay, now if I play a note on the Mini Freak, we hear it. But also, if I play notes on the Bento, we are triggering the Mini Freak. And what the Bento will do for us is we'll tell it the lowest note we want to sample and the highest note we want to sample, and it will sample all of the notes in between those notes, or every 3 notes, which I have selected here. Obviously, the more notes you sample, the more memory your multi-sample instrument is going to take up. you can still get a very high quality multi-sample instrument even if you don't sample every single note. But if you really want to go crazy, you can even sample multiple velocity layers. If your instrument or your synth has wildly different character at a high velocity or at a low velocity. I can also set the maximum velocity, the note length, the length I'd like to record, and the release. The magic of this is, if I press play and then record, it will automatically record all these notes for me. So between C4 and C6, recording every 3 notes, that's a total of 9 samples. You can do a lot more, but I just wanted to keep it short for this example. Why do this? Because if you just record the single note of a synth, that will mean that every note you play above or below that single sample is getting either stretched or shrunk. And the quality is not going to be too great the further out you get from the original. But with multi-sampling, you're getting a really high quality replication of the original sound. Meaning, I can multi-sample all my favorite presets from the Mini Freak, put them into the Bento, and this thing fits into my bag a lot better than this thing. And also the Bento is battery operated, not so much on the Mini Freak. But it's finished recording those 9 notes, so now I have a fully playable instrument made from the multi-samples recorded from the Mini Freak. And in the settings for the synth, I can still change things like the ADSR, and in the mixer, dial in some reverb and delay. It might not sound exactly the same, but I think it does a pretty good job, and the process was not that complicated. Okay, so I really love granular synthesis. Actually, my first 1010music device was the Lemon Drop, a 2-layer granular synth in a little box. Well, they actually took the power of the Lemon Drop and they put it right here into the Bento. And you can make some really cool sounds with it. Since we've already got the Mini Freak connected, let's use it to sample into the granular engine. We've got 2 layers here. We could either record a sample right in or load a sample. Let's go ahead and record a sample. I'm going to record this sound. That's actually a sequence, which I think will make great granular material. First I'll press record, then press play, and we've started recording. And then I'll let it fade out, press record again, and here is our sample. Since I didn't start recording right away, I can trim right from this screen. Great, and I won't trim the end, I'll leave the tail, but I will normalize the sample and then press save. So here is our cropped sample as a layer in the granular sampler. So now, let's dial in some granular settings. We can dial in some delay and reverb. After dialing in the sound a bit, I think this will be a cool first layer. But we of course have the ability to add a second layer here. Let's do that using this tape player as a microphone, and I'll sample my voice. And if I want to modulate something, like the play position of the second layer, my voice, I can just find it in the modulation list, choose what source I want it to be modulated with, like pressure, an envelope, or an LFO, and it's that easy. Now the position of that second layer will bounce around. Let's do the same thing with grain layer 1 and have the play position change with pressure. Now if I add pressure, we'll change the position. This sound is feeling a little unanchored though, and what's cool is we actually have an oscillator here that we can add to our sound. So what if I just added a sine wave playing a lower octave? After dialing the sound a bit, I think I created something weird, but kind of cool. And to me, that's kind of the magic of Granular. Okay, the third big feature that really impressed me was the looper. You can actually loop in real time with quantized fixed length loops right here on the Bento. It's a really cool performance tool, but also a very useful sampling workflow. Okay, so I have pre-created a very simple drum loop on one of my tracks, but I've also created a looper track on another track. So here I have a looper track where I can record 16 loops that can actually be in time with my project. I'm going to record a 4-bar loop with 1-bar quantization, so we always start recording on a downbeat, and I'm going to turn record to play on, meaning that when I finish a loop, it should just play back immediately. So in this first slot, I'm going to press play. We're going to hear our drum loop. Now when I press record, it's going to start recording, but not until the next downbeat. 2, 3, 4. We're recording. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, ready, loop. A little hiccup there, but we are able to record in time, and then I can jump to basically another loop slot. And maybe we'll record another melody on top of this. Go. Nice. So you can see how this can get really, really fluid, and you can just start building up a song. Ooh, I like that sound. Let's record something. You can mix these individual loops and also edit each one of them individually with an ADSR envelope, LFOs. You can change their loop behavior, launch mode toggle. You can even just turn looping off, so you could essentially have one-shots in here as well. And each individual pad can get its own effects like reverb and delay sends. And we can filter as well. So the ability to individually mix all of these loops and send them to different effects is a lot of fun and an easy, fluid method of sampling. My first immediate gripe with the Bento was that as you're scrolling through different presets for different synths, there was no patch preview. And I say was because they've recently just added it into a beta firmware, which actually might even be an official release by the time you're seeing this. So maybe it's not even worth mentioning, but To not have patch preview was pretty jarring. Second is there's no real easy way to export your session out of the Bento. You can actually see on this screen right here, it kind of looks like Ableton Live session view. Would be really cool to be able to export in that format, but really no current way to even export stems out of the Bento. The current best practice is just to use the internal resampling. Not amazing. Next, I gave so much love to the Granular synth, right? And I've been having a lot of fun recording my own samples into it. Well, if you don't give those samples their own unique name and you just use the automatic sample name that it gives you, the Bento will actually lose that sample after you close out of the project, and when you reopen the project, your sample will be gone, you can't find it. So make sure you give those samples unique names. Here's a little tiny nitpick. On the mixer page, we have all of our outputs and our headphones, our main output, and mixer stuff, right? Well, the metronome volume isn't here. The metronome volume is on the launch page. Just a small nitpick, but I'm usually like, wow, this metronome is way too loud, and I can never find it, and it's because it's hidden away on this launch page. One thing holding the Bento back from being a real performance powerhouse is the lack of performance effects. We have compressor that we can dial in on the master, but there's no sort of global performance effects. There's just the per track, reverb and delay, modulation effects, but no real effects that you can perform with. Two final quick ones. When you go to the sequencing page, you might expect to be able to use these nice pads as step sequencers, but no such luck. There's no step sequencing here on these pads. You can of course draw notes in on the piano roll, but that's not the same thing as step sequencing. And finally, there is no USB audio on this device. I mean, they were more than generous with the ins and outs for both MIDI and audio. I just love USB audio. It's super convenient, and I wish it would be a standard for all portable music making devices going forward. None of these things are really deal breakers, but they are things that you should consider so you don't get frustrated on day one expecting certain things. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that Bento combines some of my favorite features of a lot of different Grooveboxes. Let me explain some of those. The SP404 is a masterful sampler. There's a reason it's a legendary device. But the more features they add, the more button combinations you need to remember. From a workflow standpoint, a more modern interface with Bento's touchscreen is a lot more convenient. And even though they added a looper to the SP404 Mark II, it's nothing compared to the fluid workflow on the Bento. In order to preserve your loop layers on the 404, you have to consistently bounce out your samples, kind of breaking that real-time flow. And as you just saw on the Bento, you can record 16 samples into the looper, and you've got pretty extensive mixing and effect capabilities for each individual sample. Now another roll-in device, the P6, it's like almost pocketable, so it's actually more mobile than the Bento, but that comes with the trade-off of that limited display where you have to remember what everything means and kind of menu dive, and that's especially painful with the Granular feature on the P6, which is one of my favorite features. I mean, to have a tiny box like that with a Granular engine is great, but you're limited in your sample length, and if you want to find any of those advanced features like window and jitter and all the Granular features you want, you're gonna have to find them on that little display and do a bit of menu diving. Obviously, as you saw, it's very easy and very fluid on the Bento, and it's a 2-layer Granular engine. And then there's my beloved Ableton Move, the perfect Ableton sketchpad with cloud sharing. The Bento cannot compete with that ecosystem, but you do have 8 total tracks on the Bento in comparison to Move's 4, and the sound design and editing not only feels more fluid, again, giant screen, but I think you can get a lot more advanced work done on the Bento. Slightly unfair comparison because that's not what the Move was really made for, it's not what it's advertised as, but it is a big difference to 2 similar sized products. On the other end of the spectrum, Push 3 standalone. I love it at my standalone station. Again, it's tied into the Ableton ecosystem, share projects over Wi-Fi, open them up on my computer. Love that. But over time, I found myself mostly using Push 3 at a desktop. It's heavy, it does fit in some bags, but I'll be pushing the weight limit on some of these airlines if I bring that Push standalone with me. Bento is more portable, it does have some limitations, and I'll talk about this in a bit, but I think Bento sits in this sweet spot between Move and Push. But just to tighten up this point, the iPad. I have an iPad mini, I love it. These are very capable devices. There's an app for almost any kind of music making, sampling, synthesis, and you can combine it all in an app like AUM. So yes, you could probably have a whole music making setup based around an iPad mini, and it's not that expensive for the power that the iPad mini brings. But I'm making this video through the lens that I love dedicated music making devices. It's a focused experience where the iPad ecosystem is sort of sprawling. A big takeaway I have for the Bento is that this feels like a device that Ableton should have made. It's not as simple and limited as the Move, but it's not quite as powerful as the Push. It sits as this like perfect midpoint in between those machines. That's both in like feature set and in price. And the interesting part about that is 1010 Music is a much smaller company than Ableton. Somehow they built a machine that balances the features and the compromises better than a lot of bigger brands. I can do slightly more complex musical tasks on Bento than I can on Move, and it's much more portable and I would say inviting than Push 3. I don't think it's going to replace either of those for me. There's still a lot of perks between using actual Ableton created devices and being an Ableton Live user, but if 1010 adds basic Ableton Live session support or an Ableton Live controller mode, this would be some serious competition. Would love to hear your thoughts about the Bento in the comments below. I do feel like we're living in a bit of a renaissance when it comes to portable music making gear, especially standalone gear. There's a lot of options and there's a lot of competition, which hopefully means the whole space gets pushed forward in terms of what features companies need to include to be able to compete in this landscape. So it's cool to see a smaller player like 1010 Music take a swing and make something really, really great. Leave a like on your way out. Shout out to my channel members for supporting month after month. That's going to be all for now. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.